Now, some movies are classics because they're just fundamentally airtight. Others are because they're just groundbreaking overall. And some, they just survive on pure movie star voltage alone, where the plot is basically hanging on for dear life while two charismatic leads just drag the whole thing across the finish line with star power alone. And sometimes that's exactly what makes them fun. In this episode of Is This Still Any Good?, we're looking back at Bird on a Wire from 1990, an action comedy that doesn't exactly reinvent anything, but absolutely knows how to keep itself moving. It's part rom-com, part chase movie, part witness protection scramble, and part excuse to watch Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn bicker, flirt, panic, and outrun trouble for nearly 2 hours. So we're going to break down the wins, the misses, and the maybes to see if this summer popcorn flick from the past still flies today. Released on the eve of popcorn season in 1990, Bird on a Wire was directed by John Badham, and it stars Mel Gibson, Goldie Hawn, David Carradine, and Bill Duke. Now, the setup here is a pure old-school Hollywood contraption, but it certainly works. Mel Gibson plays Rick Jarman, a guy living under witness protection who keeps bouncing from one identity to the next, while Goldie Hawn plays Marianne, the ex, who suddenly stumbles back into his life, which of course means some bad guys, in this case David Carradine and Bill Duke, will also stumble back into his life, sending Rick and Marianne on the run together.
Yeah, you mean like this? Is that good?
Yeah, this is funny to you.
So right away, you know the movie is not aiming for realism. This thing wants momentum, constant friction, wisecracks, a buffet of close calls, and a whole lot of "how are these two people still alive" misses, and to its credit, it commits 150% to that lane. Now, the biggest thing working for this movie certainly is the Gibson-Hawn chemistry. That's the engine, that's the fuel, and that's the duct tape holding the hood down while this whole summer blockbuster machine just barrels down the highway at you at full speed. Because the truth is, Bird on a Wire is far from some elegant script machine. It's a star vehicle, and thankfully it had two A-list stars who knew exactly how to sell this kind of material. Mel Gibson brings that loose, fast-talking, half-grinning charm that made him such a natural leading man during his era, and Goldie Hawn, I think she gives the movie the exact kind of charisma spark that it needs. Hawn doesn't just react to the chaos, she's rolling her eyes at it, she's defiant to it, yet is constantly jumping in anyway.
No keys. Gotcha.
And that simple dynamic is what makes the movie go. I mean, even when the movie gets silly, cheesy, or a little bit too busy, which it frequently does, that commitment, I think, keeps it watchable, and it turns it into just breezy, feel-good entertainment. And it's a focal reason the movie stays enjoyable even when the plot starts tying itself into knots. Bird on a Wire is not some think piece. It's not trying to be clever in some intricate puzzle box kind of way. It's doing the big studio road movie thing where the fun comes from the momentum, the personalities, and throwing enough moving parts at the audience that you never get too bored. It's romantic, comedy, adventure, comfort cinema, and when you meet it on those terms, I think it's effortlessly engaging.
Hey, what's going on, officer?
Folks, want to step across the street, please?
Sure.
I also think the action set pieces help a lot more than people give them credit for. It's a fun, action-filled movie. This movie doesn't just park the camera and coast on banter and star power. It's constantly changing gears. Some would say too much, but there's a lot going on. You get close calls, shootouts, motorcycle and car chases, couple fights here and there, frequent escape sequences, and a lot of Gibson and Hawn running around in increasingly ridiculous situations that just gives the whole thing a nice, fun, restless energy. It may not hit on the same level of the truly great Buddy on the Run movies, but it definitely understands that this kind of film needs movement. It needs to feel like it's always one step away from another bad decision or another narrow escape or another completely unnecessary but entertaining scenario, to which this movie succeeds. And maybe more than anything, there's just a very early 90s studio movie energy to the whole package that I find surprisingly charming. Bird on a Wire is glossy and broad and overstuffed, but also completely unashamed about wanting to entertain you. And really, it's the kind of movie that you'd catch on cable halfway through and still sit down for the ride, because the star power alone does most of the heavy lifting when it comes to luring you in. Now, with all of that said, Bird on a Wire is definitely not a perfect movie. The biggest and most notable issue is that it tries to do too much, and at nearly 2 hours, this movie does start to feel a little out of breath in the back half. There are stretches later in this one where the constant forward movement does start to feel less like momentum and more like a movie frantically emptying its pockets out onto the table. You get new locations, new complications, it gets more over the top, more close calls, zoo animal cameos, so admittedly it does get a little fatiguing, and because the story is so cluttered, it never really becomes especially memorable or notable because of its built-in predictability. You may not be able to remember or predict every detail of how this movie gets from point A to point B, but you definitely know the general roadmap already. You can feel the pit stops coming, you can feel the turns in the story before they happen. So if somebody is looking for a tight, cleverly built action comedy with a really sharp script, this probably isn't going to hit the cinematic sweet spot for you.
Put your arms up.
Down on the floor, now!
I also think the movie occasionally pushes the silliness a bit too far, especially as it gets closer to the finish line, because there is a version of this script that just tightens up things a little bit, trims 10 to 15 minutes off, and maybe plays a few moments a little straighter that I think does land a little bit better, because there are points here where the sappiness and the chaos does start crowding each other, and this is when the movie really does start to tip over into pure goofiness. And the only reason the movie doesn't fully lose its footing is because Gibson and Hawn, to their credit, keep dragging it back into, okay, this is still pretty fun territory. So Gibson and Hawn do bring the charm to deliver light laughs, but the story never gives the characters enough room to really breathe. It's less Rick and Marianne becoming defined people and more Mel Gibson and Goldie Hawn doing movie star ping pong at a very high level, and that alone is entertaining, no question, but it does keep the movie from just having a deeper emotional hook, because you never really see Hawn and Gibson as anything other than Hawn and Gibson. A fun bit of production trivia is that this one was originally supposed to pair Goldie Hawn with Kurt Russell, which really makes total sense on paper, but Russell was already committed to Tango and Cash, and according to the director's notes, he was the one that actually suggested to director John Badham that he reach out to Mel Gibson instead. So it's one of those cool little fork in the road casting stories, because it completely changes the flavor of the movie. Same basic concept, completely different energy. Gibson here ends up bringing more of a grinning chaos machine quality to the role, which honestly does suit the movie solidly, but it's hard to say that Russell wouldn't have crushed this character as well. Now, where Bird on a Wire really did connect was with audiences at the box office. This thing was a killer. It opened #1 domestically with about $15.3 million. It would go on to gross roughly $71 million in the States. International sales would push that tally up to $138.7 million worldwide, all up against a reported $20 million budget. So Bird on a Wire was a viable commercial success, even if the critics were pretty mixed on it.
He and Diggs are after us. I mean, they're after us, and they seem to know every move we're making. And I think somebody at the Bureau is doing us in.
I work at the zoo.
And honestly, when you look at it, that kind of tracks with so many movies from this era, because this is exactly the kind of movie that audiences used to show up for. Big stars, broad appeal, action, comedy, danger, romance, and just enough edge to make it feel a little rowdy without becoming too intense. So Bird on a Wire was a very Friday night, let's have some fun kind of cinematic package. Now, what keeps Bird on a Wire alive, at least for me, is that it understands the assignment. It's not trying to be prestige cinema. It's not trying to outsmart you. It's just trying to be a slick, star-driven crowd pleaser, and for large stretches, that's exactly what this movie is. It also feels like a snapshot of a very specific studio era when you could build a whole movie around the appeal of two leads, a simple high-concept premise, and enough action beats to keep the popcorn warm, and really, there's just something kind of comforting about that now. This movie may be convoluted, uneven, and occasionally too much for its own good, but it never feels lifeless. It has a pulse, it has a personality, and it has that cable era rewatchability that can cover up a lot of filmmaking sins. Because not every movie that sticks around does so because it's flawless. Some survive because they're charming, because they're fun, because they know exactly how to hit that sweet spot between ridiculous and rewatchable, and Bird on a Wire, I think, definitely lives somewhere in that suburb. So at the end of the day, Bird on a Wire, I think, is a messy but very entertaining studio star vehicle. It's got strong chemistry, solid action, enough humor to stay lively, and it just has that easygoing, just roll with it energy that just really makes it surprisingly fun and enjoyable to revisit. It absolutely has its issues. It's cluttered, it's too long in spots, too by the numbers as well to be one of the greats, but I will say when Gibson and Hawn are bouncing off one another, this movie is on cruise control, and sometimes that will get you exactly where you want to go. So for my grade, Bird on a Wire gets a solid 8 out of 10. It's not top shelf perfection, but it is a very likable and effortlessly watchable piece of early 90s feel-good movie star cinema where no matter what happened, everything just managed to work itself out by the end credits. And that wraps up this episode of Is It Still Any Good? And the verdict on Bird on a Wire is, yes, it still is. Now, if you guys, before you jet out, if you're into this sort of retro revisit and you want to continue the throwback movie journey, I got plenty more waiting for you guys. You guys can check out my Friday Night Rentals playlist. I got a bunch of 80s deep dives on there. I do the same with 90s movies over on the VHS Vault playlist, and I just did a couple of fun videos that I think you guys might enjoy. I think 1985 was the best year for action movies, so I did a video talking about that. I also think 1987, the summer of 87, was the best movie summer ever, so I did a video talking about that. You guys can find them in this video. I'll leave them pinned in the description below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Your engagement and support of the channel is what makes everything possible. Without you guys, I wouldn't have anybody to talk movies with, so if you did enjoy this episode, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, and maybe turn on the notifications so you never miss another video, because here at Sunset Video, the neon open sign's always lit up, the shelves are always stocked, and movies never say die.
Jack Burton and the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Survive a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?